and also want to have that breakfast as late as possible.
And whatever he did seems to have worked to perfection today, because he's had quite the day. F6 on the board, attacking the knight. So the line that we were seeing might be possible, might appear on the board, because once you move back with your knight to d3, the bishop on e7 is actually pinned. You have to watch out for threats all along. And I do see, or Valbar seems to say that perhaps there's something even stronger than knight d3. But I really like the move knight d3. It just feels so natural. You want to put that knight on c5 next.
Wow, but Magnus is taking his time, which means that he has also spotted
something.
And this is what we are. Is queen c2 maybe a move? Yeah, that can you try to set up some checkmating ideas with queen c7 check? Because just look at this, queen c2,
nice.
f takes e5, queen c7 check. Oops.
Peter, you can just make the moves. I think it's a really nice plan.
Yeah, queen c2. So of course black should not fall into the trap. Then we give check, and after king a7 we play d takes e5 check and checkmate with the bishop on g1, which had not yet moved. Yeah, this is freestyle chess at its best.
That bishop on g1 has been on that spot since the start of the game, and it might just deliver checkmate in this position, because this line is very much possible. If Magnus, the fact that he's slowed down, knight d3, which is such a natural move to make in this position, I think he spotted this idea of queen c2. And if you don't take on e5, you perhaps have to fall back with your knight on e6 to defend the c7 square. So I'm just wondering if he's calculating what happens after knight e6.
Yeah, knight e6, so bishop d6, in any case, make sure that you are somehow controlling the c7 square. Forget about ever capturing that knight on e5, because we need the a7 square for our king.
He's about to make a move. Nicholas, what do you think? Are we going to see knight d3 or queen c2 on the board, and which one's stronger?
Well, there are many choices, that's why he's thinking. There's also a move like h4. You could even just play king b1 and then simply take back and sacrifice the piece like this. Obviously not a very human choice, but there are different moves to consider. Certainly knight d3, very human. Queen c2 also makes a lot of sense. So he just has so many attractive choices here, and that's why he's pausing. But he's getting a little bit low on the clock, 3 minutes against 5 minutes. However, queen c2 looks good. Knight e6 is probably forced then to stop the invasion along the c file. Now bring the knight back. This looks good. Or the immediate knight d3
h4
also
played.
looks very good. But h4 has some clear advantages, because now the knight is hit. And I was thinking that after f takes e5, the plan is to go queen takes e5.
Well, knight h3, forget about everything else. Knight h3
What?
on the board.
What? Knight h3. Wow, immediately.
He really wants to get rid of this bishop that we've been pointing out, which might deliver checkmate. But Nicholas, that looks like he's self-trapping the knight. On the previous game, there was a knight on h3. There's a knight on h3 in this one. I'm seeing a similar storyline here.
Yeah, that is a common theme indeed. Well, he wants to trade and still this knight is hanging, but white can really go for the attack here. But I'm guessing that Firouzja is inviting these complications because he is ahead on the clock. And if he can maybe try to trick Magnus somehow and maybe figure out a way to pose problems when Magnus is very low on the clock and he has only around 2 minutes, then there could be a chance. Now queen c2 with the threat of queen c7 followed by knight c6. It's very powerful, so you cannot allow this kind of business. You have to give the queen and lose the game very soon. And now after knight h3, he's still thinking. So after queen c2, bishop d6 would be necessary to stop this. And now maybe bishop e3, but just giving up this full piece seems scary.
He played the move queen c2, but he's under 2 minutes and his heart rate is about over 100, 105. That's kind of a record. We haven't seen it from Magnus so far. Bishop d6, bishop e3 on the board, and all eyes on the next complications. I did feel on Magnus's body language that he felt like, wow, why did this got so complicated? He understands that probably objectively is winning, but he also has little time on the clock. He knows how tricky, how dangerous Alireza is. He only needs one chance, one shot to get into the game. But Magnus is playing everything correctly.
But I want to dive a little deep into this position, Peter, because it feels like, wow, I was going to ask you what happens after pawn takes knight, after f takes e5, but we do have moves coming in, so perhaps we'll check in on the variations later. Alireza really doesn't want to allow the bishop into the game, but the knight on h3 is trapped, and I'm just wondering if Magnus has the time to go for it. But he has to always remember about this check on a4, Peter. That's the check which doesn't allow this queen to go for this knight on h3.
Exactly, yeah. It's clear that for sure for computer this is very easily winning. Yeah, maybe just king b1, get that king out of that corner, just to step out of queen a4 check. The king on a7 basically make sure that black will never be able to capture the knight on e5, because then d takes e5 is check. The big question, can black somehow get his knight from h8 into the game with knight f7? Yeah, and there are some, because look at this right now, knight h3, knight h8. This is not the way how we are supposed to play chess.
Yeah, knights on the rim, and this is double knights on the rim. It's double trouble for Firouzja. King b1 to me looks like such a Magnus Carlsen move to make. You know, these little king moves that just sidestep any threats in the position, and then you're free with your queen. It's definitely on his radar, but he doesn't go for it. He goes for a different approach, Peter. He goes for f4. He's really trapping the knight. This is crazy. Like you pointed out, you can't take on e5. Do you have time to actually now bring the knight into the game? Do you have knight f7?
Well, but I think that after knight f7 with f4, he made sure that I will not touch my e5 knight. That knight will stay on e5. Please take it. I reinforced it with both my pawns d4, f4. But Magnus is under a minute. This is the only hope that Alireza has. Maybe some rook d8, king a8, just to get that rook into the game and then move that king out of this diagonal so that eventually will be settling to take on e5. But yeah, as you highlighted, the knight on h3 is trapped. It will never run away.
But it's credit to Alireza that he's really managed to kind of get Magnus in murky territory. The deep dark forest of complications where 2 + 2 is equal to 5. The path out is wide enough for just one, narrow enough for just one. It's McCarthal's forest of complications.
Yes, exactly. And it's also very much Alireza's style. So heart rates 115 for Alireza against 104. Yeah, Magnus is feeling the pressure, but this is how it should be. Yeah, nothing is given for free. Even in winning positions, these guys are creating problems. They never go down without any fight.
Reza there looking at the clock. He knows it's so important for him to keep the pressure on the clock as well. The more he thinks, the more time Magnus gets to think about the position as well. So f4 on the board. What do you think would be Alireza's next move here? I like your idea of stepping in with rook d8, because as long as queen a4 jumps in with a check, your queen is still tied up. The only issue I see is that maybe the queen's tied up, but can white actually start attacking the knight with the rook? Is that a problem in black's position?
I think there are many problems, but we can also address it to Nicholas quickly. What is your take, Nicholas? What's happening?
Well, it seems the only choice to somewhat keep the game going is to go knight g6.
Wow.
Not an easy move to spot to begin with. If the knight takes, you could take the bishop on e3. If the queen takes, the queen moves away from defending the knight on b3, but even here after knight g6, honestly, you could still maybe go rook h1. Black has no threat, and as far as I can see it, it's also very much lost. So I think the position is just lost. f4 was a really nice touch, stabilizing the knight. This one is trapped. Black can never really take. It opens up the bishop, and Firouzja knows he is lost here.
And he's also under 2 minutes now. And after much discussion, you know, the realization that it's not just the queen, but also the rook that can go after this knight. And this could be the last few moves for Alireza in his mini match against Magnus.
He will try to come up with some more swindle, but yeah, basically knight g6 is one of these shockers. Yeah, if he can find knight g6, then that could maybe also have some effect on Magnus. Yeah, that if he hadn't foreseen knight g6, and knowing that from the white side, you think like, okay, I'm winning. The only thing I have to make sure to control the clock. Yeah, and now I'm gonna speed up and I have my plans. Maybe knight g6 can unsettle things, but if he has this clear vision that rook h1 simply wins the game, then knight g6 will not disbalance him at all.
And Alireza is about to make the move. The clocks are leveling out now, but it is very difficult for black in this position to even find the next move, and knight g6 would be quite the genius move in this position. You see your knight, your queen attacking the opponent's knight and queen attack. And we do have a move, I
No,
believe.
look at this. Not yet, but it's, yeah, and he
Rook
moves the
d8.
rook because under a minute, Alireza has spoiled all his time advantage. Yeah, knight c5 blitzed out instantly by Magnus. And now he wants to play queen b3, or he wants to even already, yeah, he wants to checkmate black.
And it doesn't feel like it's a faraway reality if black was to take on c5.
Queen b5
But
played.
we've got moves coming in, but you never want to open up that light squared bishop. Queen b5.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice move, yeah, because
a5 is hanging.
a5 is hanging. You guard the b7 pawn. The computer is believing that it's kind of game over, but we are down to 45 seconds territory. Anything can happen unless there is a very clear way of winning things.
I agree. I think it's a game for all three results still. And Magnus still needs to be precise. And now he's touching the 30-second mark.
Yeah, and he is also confronted. Why is this game still on? Yeah, why I haven't won this game yet? Yeah, this is quite frustrating. And down to 20 seconds.
Alireza creating threats on the board. And you kind of have to watch out because at some point this might become a reality in the position.
Yes, and look at this. Down to 10 seconds. Magnus is showing sign of nerves.
Yeah.
Right? He needs
Doesn't
to
know
make
what
a
to
move
do.
now.
5 seconds.
Magnus, has he forgotten about the clock? He makes it a bit of
Oh
a
my
panic
God.
there.
With 3 seconds on the clock, he played the move queen b3.
That's
but
not a good one.
It's
That's not a good one.
Not a good
No,
one at
bishop
all.
takes c5. And Firouzja is back.
Wow.
Nicholas, really quickly, show us what's the way forward for Nicholas. Okay, we've got
he
moves
made a
coming
mistake.
in.
He
No,
made a
he took
mistake.
on
Took on
a5. Yeah,
A5.
he took on a5 with check, very natural. By the way, also the heart rate over 138.
Watch out, mate in one threatened.
30 seconds for Alireza.
And you really don't want to go bishop takes knight here. I would even be worried about just take with the pawn. I don't believe you have the time. This comes in
He
with a
played
check.
queen b6.
Queen b6 on the board, trying to trade off. Queen b5, trying to trade off. It's done.
Queen b5, yeah, takes.
Have with this knight.
Now it's completely lost.
Knight on h3 is completely trapped. Can Magnus just... Yeah, he can do whatever he
He played
wants.
knight e6, yeah?
Yeah, knight e6. I was even wanted to say knight cd3, but yeah, knight e6, of course, is just winning.
It's winning everything. Whenever you take on e5, there is a discovered check, winning the bishop. Where do you move your rook? g7 is hanging, and always the idea of rook h1. And now Alireza with 5 seconds on the clock.
Yeah,
3,
in a hopeless
2.
situation. Rook g8 played.
Defending g7. Finally, rook h1 on the board.
F takes e5, so the knight on e5 is eliminated, but the knight on h3 has fallen. White has the winning structure. Black's knight on h8 is horrible. Black has these beautiful pawns, e5, f4, g3. That's a lovely pawn chain. Black's pawns on d5, b5, b7, all vulnerable, very weak. It's game over. And Black has to win this game, which is just impossible.
I mean, you can compare every element of this position and you see why Magnus is clearly winning. The knight against the knight, the rook against the rook, the pawns against each other, even the white bishop more active there. And Magnus, you can see it in him. He knows that he's got the job done, just needs to make the next couple of moves.
Yeah, rook c1 check, king d7, f5, and seems like it's
Just get
finished.
those pawn rollings.
Yep.
And the knight will fall back. You can go to d4, you can go to f4, start pushing. I like knight f4.
Yeah, it's basically a complete domination. Okay, rook c, whatever, yeah, everything is falling apart. Black has no activity.
And bishop b6 runs into a check, so there are no
Yeah,
tricks in the
that is
position.
nice.
That's it. Magnus Carlsen bounces back. A difficult moment there for Alireza, and you could see it that for both players, this has been such a big battle, such a big match.